Welcome to the special edition of Education Matters. We'll be talking about the path to progress, but we'll be tying this one in to school funding in S2. With me on the far left is Senator Steve Oroho from Sussex County, and also to my immediate left is the Senate President Steve Sweeney. As you know, Senator, you passed S2 last year. There are most districts receive more funding. Some districts did not receive as much funding, and we're taping this before the budget message, and those districts probably will be coming to Trenton at some point. How do you see the path to progress in school funding? Actually, why did you pass S2? Why do you think it's fair?
Well, S2, the reason why I think it's fair is because, we have a formula where the money's supposed to follow the child. And when we first did the formula, we said, wait a minute, if we had enacted the formula as soon as we passed it, there was going to be a lot of districts hurt. So they created a category adjustment aid, I'm sorry, and they did enrollment caps. So where districts were losing children, they didn't lose any funding. So you have districts that were winners. I keep hearing about winners and losers and how unfair this is. You had districts for 9 years that were getting funding for kids that they didn't have, and they knew this had to end at some point. And then you had districts that were growing that are the losers. And it's what's most offensive to me is because I've heard this from school board members. Well, the districts that were underfunded, been underfunded for a long time, so they're used to it. No, it's not the way it works. And then when you look at the property tax issues, I live in Gloucester County. Washington Township in Gloucester County had either 1,200 or 1,600 students they were getting funding for that they didn't have. Washington Township has one of the best athletic programs in the state. They got great after-school programs. They got tablets for all their kids. Then you go right across into my district, Kingsway. Kingsway is a regional school district that had 1,000 kids they weren't getting any funding for. Kingsway's track, you can't run track because the track's beyond repair. They cut freshman sports. Kids were sharing books. They couldn't take books home. You know what I mean? And Kingsway's paying, roughly in the Kingsway school district area, they were paying $12,000, $15,000 average property taxes. Washington Township was paying $8,300. And why they're paying $8,300? Because they're getting money for kids they don't have, where the other place has kids and they're not getting any funding. I don't make any apologies at all for the school districts that are protesting. The people in those towns should have asked them, why didn't you make these adjustments? Why didn't you shrink? Why didn't you redesign your educational platform when you don't have these kids? Look, New Jersey is a state that doesn't have a lot of money to start with. And, so that the only way we're ever going to get to full funding, and our goal is to get to full funding, is to add money each year into the funding formula, take extraordinary special education, take care of that, and then move this adjustment aid. We're giving them 7 years. It's not one swoop. Now they know it's coming, and everyone said, oh, you're doing it too late. Well, the year before last year, we said this was going to start. Be ready because it's going to happen next year, and on and on and on until we get to where the money follows the child, period.
Now, in your district, have a lot of those districts that lost.
Well, I voted against S2. Yeah. Not that I didn't agree that the changes had to happen because it was unfair for the school districts that had a significant enrollment. Enrollment's going to be the base. It should be the base for anything of any kind of aid. If you're losing enrollment, you got to make decisions. If you're gaining enrollment, then there should be additional funding for that. However, the original adjustment aid for the SFRA, and that was before I actually got into the Senate. It was actually the night before I got in the Senate. The issue there is that was a plug number, and it was basically based upon, I would say that the weights of certain categories were wrong. Like, for example, the geographic cost factor. It's a very arcane type of issue, but it affects suburban, really rural areas where they say it's cheaper to educate a child. That's not true. All right, so I'd love to say, and the Senate President was very good at making adjustments in when the Christie administration was in the appropriations bill in some of those factors. Maybe that's something we should just take out, completely. The determination of an at-risk student is a very important part of the formula. However, in the rural areas, we find that parents a lot of times they don't want to sign up for the free and reduced lunch program for one reason or another. I'd like to suggest that have a measure, because we have seen some school districts that manipulate that and committed fraud, with it. I'd like to be able to say, based on something like, for example, a Title I federal funding that is something that can't be manipulated, it's an important determination, but that every child and every family is treated the same. So the basis of the S2, completely understand. But the SFRA, when it originally started, and the adjustment, and those districts that lost aid, and I've said, or lost enrollment, you got to make those decisions, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, let's fix the underlying measurements that were within the formula itself.
And see, the senator, again, I'm not opposed to looking at the school funding formula.
That's very true.
Where there maybe it wasn't done right, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
there's issues. But the one core principle is the money has to follow the
Correct.
student.
Yes.
There's no dispute, there's no argument. The money has to go to the child, not to an empty desk with no child sitting in it. Right. So, geographic issues, and we're open to looking at those things, because again, we want to be fair. Right. This isn't hey, we won, you lost. Because, like I said, what offended me the most was having overfunded districts that are losing funding now saying, well, they were used to it, so they're okay. No, it's not okay to not treat kids as fairly as you possibly can. And again, the more we can fix this, the better, the sooner we get to fully funding them. And again, we get to the extraordinary special education funding piece done. That's something we could probably get done this year. Hopefully we can get done this year in the budget. And again, with the requirement that locally, they're not spending anymore, they have to cut the tax rate by those dollars. I mean exact dollars. If it's $1 million, then your tax levy has to be cut by $1 million, not 900,000.
And so, to be clear, you would look at the school funding formula not for the enrollment issues, but if there are anomalies that
Yes.
might
Right.
affect the district, you're willing to look at that.
Realize, and it should be looked at every so many years. That's one of the things we don't do right here. We pass a law, we say we pass a law, and then we don't go back and look at it again. School funding and bills like school funding, we should go back and then say, okay, where did it work? Where did it didn't work? What adjustments we need to make? And that's what me and Steve talked about before. Steve wasn't against money following the child, but he feels the formula wasn't fair. The geographic issue wasn't fair to where he lives. By the way, I have a very rural district too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Rural areas sometimes can be very impoverished, sometimes they can be very wealthy. But at the end of the day, we want to treat our children fairly. And that's why I told the senator, I said, I'm happy to look at things where we think we might have gotten it wrong to fix it. But I know there's going to be a bunch of people protesting tomorrow that it's unfair, because there was 172 school districts that were losing aid. And honestly, I say, well, hey, we gave you 7 years. You had 9 years. We're giving you another 7 years on top of it. So you got 16 years of overfunding, because you're keeping money each year. Even though we're taking money away, you're keeping dollars that really don't belong in that district. So rather than come out with the plans on how you're going to fix what you got going on where you're at.
Mostly what I would love to be able to say is, who can argue that something should be at the base based upon enrollment? That's what we're dealing with, right? Mm-hmm. Then the other issue is, how do we have a formula that's can't be manipulated by anybody, whether it be by enrollment on one day, or whether it be by free and reduced lunch, defining at risk, or a number of other issues that we have that people could look at and plan and say, okay, here's the formula. It's mainly based on enrollment. What's my enrollment going to look like? And I think who can argue that let's have a formula that's fair and non-manipulative You can't manipulate it.
And from your perspective, does the path to progress, maybe it won't deal directly with school funding, but it does have ways to save money in other areas for all districts?
Yeah, but look, the idea in the path to progress, again, Commissioner Davey recommended that we have 3 administrative law judges or half a dozen administrative law judges that we have now, not hiring new ones, but assign them strictly to special ed cases. Because once the judge gets that expertise and that's all they're doing, they're going to get the cases turned around quicker. There's going to be more consistency. Families are going to be more comfortable. School districts will be more comfortable. That's an easy fix that could be done really without even legislation.
Just like tax court.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
you're looking for ways to save money for the local
Absolutely.
districts.
Exactly.
And cut out time. Have people, like, I was going to mention the same thing about the 3 administrative law judges, set them so that they have a specialty, and therefore, a lot of times it goes way past the time frame of when somebody's determined what that special education program's supposed to be.
Because that's a space that not everyone's used to, and if you get one case here and one case there, you really don't build the experience. And as Senator Oroho said, we have tax court, where you have judges that just specialize in taxes. Well, for special education, because it can be such a big cost to districts, and litigation can be so long, having someone that's all they do is this type of law is going to restore a lot of faith in people, because again, I have a child with a disability. I wasn't shooting for the moon and the stars. I just wanted my daughter to have a good education and to be treated just like all the other kids. You would probably have parents not as aggressive because you shoot for the moon and the stars because you think you're going to wind up somewhere less. So if you come into a system where you think you're really going to be treated well, and you know what else, and for school districts themselves, because some places are punished for, and when I say punished, that's the wrong word. Some places draw families with disabilities because you're providing services.
They do a good job.
I think the whole state does to a certain extent.
New Jersey does a good job. Some places actually do better than others. My home county, we have a school just for autistic children, as lights, colors, textures to take all the distractions away from a child with autism as they're learning. That doesn't mean that's the only option, but something, it gives a family choices. But something, you draw families because they want those options. We have options for gifted kids. We need to have options for children with disabilities too, because they're gifted in different ways.
Okay, I have one final question for the two of you. You have all those recommendations in the path to progress. Is that a starting point? I mean, are you willing to discuss different points of it with your colleagues and the governor in terms of meeting halfway or quarter way or wherever?
Well, for me,
Or are we starting down that path?
look, when Steve joined with us on this, and Paul Sarlo, who's the other chair, we put a lot of time into this. And again, we made promises to the experts that spent their time that we're not just putting this thing as it's like 10 years ago, they're going to say, oh, whatever happened to that? Did anything ever come of it? Look, I would like to pass all 32 recommendations. I'm a realist. It's not going to happen quickly. But the things in that plan have to happen in order for New Jersey to start turning itself around. And look, I'm not walking away from it. And again, I have partners. And one thing, when things aren't partisan, when they're bipartisan, you tend to be able to get more things done.
Ray, you look at the recommendations there. There's no silver bullet. Those recommendations have been around for decades. So quite frankly, as the Senate President said, these are things that absolutely they have to occur. Because let's face it, you see, our average property tax bill is just a little less than $9,000. Everybody talks about what the outcomes are and what it's causing, capital to flow, monetary capital to flow out of the city. It's causing our retirees to leave. It's our youth to leave. That's the result. So if we don't address this, don't expect, as the Senate President said, don't expect a different result. Nobody likes those results that we are having right now. So I think we have to address these issues. Some may take time, but we got to address these issues.
New Jersey's got the 5th highest tax burden in the nation. These recommendations have been heard over the years.
Yeah.
It's not the first time I've heard a lot of them.
Yeah.
You know something? Perfect example, my county does more shared services, Gloucester, than any other county in the state. And when I left in 2010, they were saving the 24 towns $30 million every year. You can save money and produce services and actually improve services. Seriously, these are things, the easy things are all gone, right? The easy things are all gone.
Yeah.
The only thing left are the hard things to do, and it's time to do the hard things.
You know, Ray, the one thing too, if you look at that, you think about, all the ideas have been there. What's been lacking has been the courage to get them done. The intestinal fortitude that has to get done. And the Senate President's been out working extremely hard, very hard to and as I said before, he put his name on the bills the really hard bills. And he'll take that leadership and he'll put it on. So I know how hard he's working. I'm trying to work hard with him, but at the same time, he's been all over the place. You just got to imagine what his schedule's like. And I got to hand it to the Senate President. He's determined, and I think he's going to get it done.
Okay, we'll end on that note, on that positive note. That ends the special edition of Education Matters on the New Jersey Economic and Fiscal Policy Workgroup and the Path to Progress.